Hi guys, Tugger here with a new video, and this video will be a Retribution Paladin PvP guide video for 10.0.7. I'm going to say what you can expect on this guide. There will be timestamps as well, so you will see and learn the stats you should go for 10.0.7. I think it is a bit different from previous patch, at least that's how I feel, and I did change a bit my stats around. We're going to talk about 3 builds that I do play a lot. I'm going to talk about my main build that I prefer the most. I know it's not the most meta, but I will give you the most meta builds around. I will also give you a third big deeps build that you can try, and a fourth build which is something I actually tried but I didn't really succeed on it, but if you want to try it yourself you can do that as well. We're going to talk also about PvP talents. We're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses. I know that there is some weaknesses. I know that Retribution Paladin is right now S+ probably. It will get nerfed eventually, but hopefully they're not going to make it dumpster tier. Hopefully it is A tier, maybe high B tier would be probably satisfying to play because it's still very fun. We're going to talk also about the differences between 10.0.5 and 10.0.7 and my whole feeling towards Retribution Paladin at the end of the video. We're going to talk also a bit about comps, but those comps are never going to change probably. But anyways, now let's start right away with the stats, and you will see again timestamps, so you can jump around or come back whenever you want more information, whenever you are like working or on your way to work and you want to see the video again. You don't have to go through the video again like full, but I would recommend you guys to watch the full video. Helps me a ton too, but also will give you some information behind in like outside of just showing you the builds, right? Now PvP stats and stats you should go for are something that I've tried it out and felt really cool, and it was actually like half haste, half crit, half mastery, excuse me, and a bit of speed and a bit of leech. So we never really went balls deep into a specific like stat. We also play human, so we do have emblem and the alacrity insignia, which is giving you extra health for Shield of Vengeance, like to survive damage. It should be very cool to have. And I like the insignia because again your burst is much more reliant right now, and you have like much more consistent damage that whenever it pops it just makes you again more likely to kill the target, because you will have another kill attempt outside of your main burst windows. Gems and enchants, basically we go for mastery, versatility. I have like a mastery like rings, but I don't have enough money for my gems. I am very poor. I have leech on my bracers, which is Drake breakers, arm plates. And we have forset, of course. The forset gives you 15% more damage on Judgment, Blade of Justice, and Wake of Ashes. But I think the 10% holy powered abilities increase is actually very, very strong. We do have tier set on the chest, the shoulders, the head, and the gloves, and we have like normal PvP conquest legs to give you more mastery. So you will have a bit of everything, unfortunately. But I really like having a half mastery, half haste. I did try full mastery, but I feel like having a bit of haste does make the class even better, because you have like a lot of time to actually weave in spells, while without like haste you do feel a bit clumsy. It's still better than previous patch, but you do feel clumsy a bit. And we play with the Earthen Red. It's very, very bursty whenever it procs. Gives you more mastery, which is in turn going to make you like burst harder. You can also go for Sophic Devotion or even Wafting Devotion. I think Wafting Devotion is also a good pick to have more haste but also more speed. That's also an option, but I do prefer Earthen Red right now. We have the crit weapon because I don't I need to farm from the other two-hander, but right now we have crit, and I feel like it's okay to have that. Now let's talk about builds. I think everyone waited for that. Builds wise, we're playing, at least what I prefer is the Holy Strike 20-yard build. That is my build that I actually play the most, and I enjoy it the most. I'm going to talk really quickly about the class tree because that is not going to change. I'm going to really rapidly do this so you can see. So basically, we're playing with everything that is good for you, and being able to sustain damage and sustain heal yourself. This build is the Holy Strike 20 yards build, and the only variation is Vengeful Wrath. I do play with Vengeful Wrath because I do like to crit a lot on my Hammer of Wrath, and Hammer of Wrath actually hits and crits for a lot whenever you're doing Avenging Wrath. And again, it just feels very good to play with. With the other builds, you will have to switch Vengeful Wrath for Divine Purpose, but for this build, I like to be able to do a lot of damage even when kited, because that is one of the weaknesses of Retribution Paladin. Still, it is being able to be kited. Unbound Freedom is now dispellable. Not that everyone was playing with the PvP talent, but now you don't even have the choice. So a mage can just still embody freedom and just blink, like freezing Nova you and blink, and they are gone, right? So you do want to have a few options, and that's why I'm playing the 20-yard build. But I will show you the other other 3 builds that I'm actually running and playing as well. So we're not playing with like shorter sacrifice. We could do that instead of playing with healing hands. Healing hands is something you actually, Pool of Glory is not something you're actually pressing. So you can actually switch out of healing hands and go for this build, but for just build purposes, I just stay with this build to show you guys what is going to happen if we ever get nerfed. I think healing hands might be good to again have more possibilities to survive. We have now Avenging Wrath on a 1-minute CD because we have Might, but we're going to talk about it on the spec tree. A few new things like Sanctified Plates, which is actually very nice versus physical damage dealers. Armor increased by 20%, stamina increased by 10%, and AoE attacks is going to be reduced by 10%. Remember, Demon Hunters have most of their attacks AoE, so you will reduce 10% of all that damage. Feral Druids as well. Any caster that does AoE damage gonna be reduced by 10%. So it's actually a very good value talent. If you do not want to have more stamina and you want to have more throughput or anything, you can go for Holy Ages. So you have like 4% armor, 4% critical strike chance. I would personally not do that. I think it's a bit outdated. This talent should be gone because you have basically Sanctified Plates being that much better for armor, and the crit chance is not something you want really to go for anyways. We have also Punishment, which is new, but I'm not playing with it because I feel like Crusader Strike is not enough to convince me to play with that. Light Force Blessing, 3% is not enough, and you're not pressing a Divine Storm at all, except maybe to fish out someone out of stealth, but even then, you're not going to press it. Face Armor is actually quite nice, but it's probably good versus armor, like physical specs, like for example, Arms Warrior. So if you're playing twos, for example, I think it could be very interesting to play around that. But I think it's more interesting for the Holy Paladin. We have still Divine Purpose, and now we have Divine Toll on the class tree. The one thing that is very strong now is Off Dusk and Down and Fading Light, basically giving you a Absorb Shield, and I mean, you're going to have a 5% damage taken reduced by like at all times because you're going to use 3 holy power generating abilities, which gives you Blessing of Down, and whenever you consume Blessing of Down by using a spender, you will get that 5% damage reduction. But basically, you're going to spam it, so you will always have Blessing of Dusk, very strong Fading Light, and that's pretty much the class tree. We do go for obduracy instead of, let's say, a faster bob or sack, whatever, but I do like the speed. I like to be very, very like clingy, and that gives me like again more uptime. But you can also just remove this point and go for sack. Again, you have a lot of choices you can make. You don't have to make them, but you can. You can also remove blinding light if you feel like, look, we don't really need blinding light because we're too strong to CC. You can also remove that and obduracy and go for like 4% crit, but I would recommend to always play with CC because again, CC is what you can actually use to win games, which is quite nice. Now let's talk about the spec tree. I think that's the most important thing, especially for the builds. There are a few different builds around there. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. So we are playing with Final Verdict. Final Verdict is the build where I'm actually like you are 20 yards, you're still dead. And there is one negative thing, which is Empyrean Legacy. Gets consumed whenever you're using a Holy Power ability that is going to spend. But the problem is, if you're like 20 yards, your Divine Storm will not hit the target. But you should just track it with a weak aura or anything, or you know that every 20 seconds you can use Empyrean Legacy. Just do not like final verdict onto someone on 20 yards. Try to make some distance, like close the distance, and actually use that whenever you have the buff. But that's pretty much like just awareness. But outside of that, I think having 20 yards is massive, especially versus casters, because you do get kited again. That's the weakness, and still is and will still be the weakness of a Retribution Paladin, even after the nerfs and even after buffs or anything. I think mobility wise, that's not going to change. We are playing with all the goodies at the top side of the tree. We do play with righteous cause because, again, we're going to spam final verdicts, which in turn has a chance to reduce or like completely reset the CD of Blade of Justice. Blade of Justice is something you want to press most of the time anyways. We're playing with Vanguard's Momentum because I do like Hammer of Wrath as well, and it just feels good because, again, we have Vengeful Wrath. We are playing like a 20-yard Paladin. You are a ranged Paladin by now. And we have all the goodies that actually gives you more ranged damage, like for example Judgment, 2 charges. You could also go for generates 1 additional unholy power because I don't feel like you are like starving of holy power, so you don't really need that. You can also go for the AoE build by removing Divine Wrath, for example. And as something else, I would say you can remove maybe improved judgment, maybe, and you can then play with 2 points in blessed champion, for example, in RPGs, or maybe you just only need 1 point, so you can also just remove divine wrath and go for blessed champion, so you can actually cleave in threes. Now, is it needed? I don't think so, but you could do that maybe once the nerfs are in and you do need some cleave damage. I think that could be a very good option. We play also with Judge, Jury, and Executioner because, again, Judgment is a big damage dealing ability and we do need some crits from it because it does 100k, and 100k is not something you can scoff at. We have Vanguard of Justice. New talent, very strong. I think it needs to get nerfed. In PvP, I think it can even be super harsh. I think it's something I'm going to discuss about it at the end of the video, so you have more context. But as a whole, I think the objective of like the rework is not like 100% attained by Blizzard. I think they did really say something and do the contrary. So I'm going to talk about it at the end of the video if you are interested in my opinion. Now, we're playing with, again, all the goodies for extra damage on Holy Strike, and we have Divine Arbiter. I'm going to explain really quickly what it is one time because all the builds have that pretty much. You have 5% increased damage and casting abilities that deal Holy Strike damage, and every time you're going to use a Holy Strike damage ability, it will grant you a stack of Divine Arbiter. And after 25 stacks, your next damaging single target Holy Power ability causes huge Holy Strike damage. Huge Holy Strike damage. So again, they're stacking, and whenever you have 25 stacks, you have your wings up, you have your judgment up, you have your execution sentence up, and you have your Empyrean Legacy up. Whenever you're going to do a final verdict, someone is going to be blown up by 300k instant damage. Like, everything combined is going to be 300k. And then you have like your execution sentence basically giving them a time bomb on their face, like they are dead. And that's pretty much what is happening in games. You're going to heal the damage that is going to happen with Divine Arbiter, but the damage has been so stacked that it will just kill you with an execution sentence, because you cannot survive 100k DPS at that specific moment. It's too much for healing, so that is going to be probably nerfed, I think, by half. If it's by half, I would even say that it is not even enough. I do like Retribution Paladin. I feel like I'm a hater whenever I'm saying that, but we do need a nerf. It's not healthy for the game. I think people are going to stop queuing because Retribution Paladin is, dare I say, the most OP spec right now in the game, and it's by a mile, man. It's literally a subtlety rogue fusioned with an arms warrior, fusioned with a demon hunter, fusioned with a like holy paladin, because you have a lot of immunities. So there is no way you're going to stay like this. The only thing that you're missing in the kit is actually mobility and an MS effect. That's the only thing you're missing. And you have so much more things going on for you as a spec that really again, I'm rambling, but let's go right away with the current build. So we're playing with Execution Sentence. I think it's the most strong thing. Final Reckoning is fun for like the best possible holy power spender damage in a very long window. 16 seconds is very long, but Execution Sentence is the one thing that can make you pretty much kill someone every 30 seconds. Every time you're going to Hajj, there is someone who is going to die. You're going to do Execution Sentence, you have enough time to do damage, and then you're going to Hajj the healer. The healer has no way to respond to the damage that is going to happen with Execution Sentence, and it's over. You pretty much can also just train the healer, and the healer will die eventually. That is actually what's happening in the games. You have Wake of Ashes actually doing a little bit less damage than in 10.0.5, but you have something that is actually very nice, which is Seething Flames. And again, doing damage while you're actually doing damage with other abilities is what makes it very hard to heal. Because whenever you're doing Wake of Ashes and then you're going to do Final Verdicts, for example, or a Judgment, you have at the same time Seething Flame doing damage, extra damage onto the enemy. It's actually very strong as well. So that is pretty much the first build, and the USP for this build is pretty much range damage. So you have always uptime with Blade of Justice or Final Verdict. You have Judgments actually hitting and critting for a lot. You have Hammer of Wrath, actually a very important spell in your rotation, and also very feels good spell too. It's also a lot of Holy Strike, but that's pretty much how it is in PvP. You have Holy Strike, so it will go through AMS, AMZ, through multiple things that can actually immune damage, like for example Cloak. So it goes through Cloak. So you are pretty much a rogue killer, a DK killer now, which was not the case previous patch. Previous patch, DKs were like the bane of your existence because they could actually immune a lot of damage with AMS and AMZ. But right now it's not possible with Holy Strike being a thing. So this is the build. I'm going to show you guys the most meta build, and again, it is the most meta build. You can fight me on it, but this is the build with JV. I like this build, but I think it's also the build that is the most possible to get nerfed. It's also the most sustainable because you have Justicar's Vengeance actually giving you HP with 6% of your maximum health. It is in general a buff. Like before you did the healing of your damage, it is strong, but it is also reduced by damage reduction abilities, for example, like PS. But this is like 6% at all times, except you have dampening, of course, but it's 6% at all times. So if there is no dampening, you will always heal 6%. It doesn't matter if they are immune, it doesn't matter if you have like a pain suppression on them or a dome on them, you will always heal 6%. So it's very, very consistent. But also, whenever you're going to stun the healer and you're doing your full rotation, Justicar's Vengeance can just crit for 180k if you're full mastery. After that, what you're going to do is half mastery, half haste, so it will be 150k. But do remember, you have also Imperial Legacy, and if you have Divine Arbiter at the same time, you are going to obliterate that healer. No questions asked. So again, I think this build is the same as the Temperance Verdict, but like the Final Verdict build, but it is a bit less rangy. You also have Divine Purpose, so again, you have more burstiness, more randomness too, because again, it's a 10% chance, but it does a lot of damage. It does a lot of damage, and it will get nerfed probably, so try it, build it, play it, have fun with it, and probably have a backup plan, because this is not going to stay how it is. Execution Sentence is still too strong. I think it's too strong. Maybe a 1 minute CD, but even a 1 minute CD for the amount of usefulness you have on that will be too probably powerful for a current meta. So that is the build, like the meta build. Pretty much big damage. More melee, has more sustain because you have Justicar's Vengeance, and you have more burstiness because you have the stun into Justicar's Vengeance with Imperial Legacy with Divine Arbiter. That is going to blow up anyone, and then you have Execution Sentence actually falling down, and they know they're cooked, right? So that is pretty much how I play. We have the most damage Justicar Vengeance build, which is pretty much the same build, but we're playing with Final Reckoning. And if you have like all the damage like lining up, you're going to do the biggest Justicar's Vengeance window. And of course, with Final Reckoning, it's a 16 seconds duration, giving you 30% increased damage from your holy power abilities. And that will also work for Empire and Legacy. It will not work for Divine Arbiter, but Divine Arbiter will always like hit for 65, between 65 and 75k, depending if you have Avenging Wrath or not. So the damage is disgusting. There is nothing to say about it. You will have a lot of fun with it. That is my third preferred build. My second preferred build is the JV build, so just the normal execution sentence. The third one is the Final Reckoning. I think it's very fun, but I do feel like a 1 minute CD on Final Reckoning is long compared to an execution sentence, which is by itself very strong. And you have like my favorite build, which is the Holy Strike 20 yards build. Now we have a fourth build, which is a quite a meme build, let's be honest. It's playing around Divine Storm, playing around with Searing Light. It is not meta. Remember, this is not a meta build. It is pretty much a build that is going to probably get a buff in the future, and will be probably competing with the Divine Arbiter build. But I think Divine Arbiter is just so much better than Searing Light. It also procs approximately at the same rate. It doesn't do that much damage. It's AoE, okay, it's better for AoE. I think for Mythic Plus it's going to be quite nice. But for PvP, all this combined is just not good enough. I kind of like am sad that Expurgation is not as good as before, because then this build would be very, very good. But right now, this build is like, I tried to make it work, it didn't really work. I switched directly to the Holy Strike 20 yards build, and it went a lot better. So again, I think I'm one of the only paladins that actually play with Vengeful Wrath, but I do feel Vengeful Wrath is actually a very good and legit build to play whenever you're playing versus casters, because people are going to kite you, guys. You're going to remember the days where you're going to be like a wheelchair, because it is still a wheelchair class, but right now you blow someone up whenever you're like melee, so I prefer to blow someone up even at 20 yards. That's my opinion on that. Now let's talk about PvP talents real quick. So they removed Unbound Freedom, they put it on the class tree. They removed the Hand of Hindrance, which is basically a boring spell anyways and didn't really work anyways, so that's gone. But they nerfed Lawbringer. I feel like Lawbringer is not the way to go anymore. It's way too, like, it's not enough 4%. Even the HP's increases are not going to make you go for Lawbringer. So we have a new spell. It's Blessing of Spell Warding. Finally, you have something to use versus casters. Big win for Retribution Paladin. Even nerfed, I think it is going to make Retribution Paladin with a warrior even more deadly, because now you can just Blessing of Spell Warding probably the warrior or yourself and go for a complete go on the enemy team, and that can be like game changing. So I think it's a very good extra talent you can have. You also have Spreading the Word, which can be interesting, because if you're doing Blessing of Protection, you're going to get a physical damage you're going to give a AoE physical damage reduction by 30%. So if you're facing warriors or outlaw rogues, even subtlety rogues, that is going to be massive. Even BM hunters, to be honest, and MM hunters, like anything physical, this is going to be quite nasty. And I do like to play Spreading the Word instead of like Vengeance Aura if I'm facing physical damage dealers. It's actually like saving a lot of people. If they're not going for you, you're going to save someone by doing a AoE physical damage reduction. And also doing an AoE Blessing of Freedom is also quite nice, clearing all movement impairing effects. Again, very nice. I think Demon Hunter Retribution Paladin might be very strong because of that as well. Aura of Reckoning is still something I'm playing. You don't have to, because it's nerfed. It's a nerf state again. It's also it's only like 6 seconds Avenging Wrath. It does feel very good whenever it procs, because you have a big melee attack, and sometimes you can kill people because of it. You also have Judgments of the Pure, very good PvP talent, but be careful versus Affliction Warlocks. You're going to kill yourself by using it, so I would not use that. But versus, let's say, the Unholy TKs, like clearing diseases, is actually very, very strong. And unholy DKs are really in a rough space. I think they will have to need a rework or a big buff to actually come back to some kind of relevancy right now. We have Blessing of Spell Sanctuary, again, a very big PvP talent. If you want to save yourself from dying because of stun or silence or fear, just use your Blessing of Sanctuary on the healer and you're good to go. You're pretty much saved the day. So do play that if you feel like you need the extra removal of stun, silence, and fear. After not versus a Shadow Priest, it's going to be key. So play that if you're playing versus Shadow Priest with Blessing of Spell Warding on the first talent. We have Luminescence, which is now a perma uptime because you have you have how it's called Crusader's Reprieve. So what you're going to do is pretty much heal yourself at all times, and this is going to give you luminescence on you and all your allies. So that's actually very strong. I mean, it's a very strong PvP talent. It's only 4%, but 4% increased damage and healing is actually very noticeable for the whole game. So that's pretty much it. You can also play Hallowed Ground in RPGs. I would not do that, but you can do that because again, if you're in like a big team fight, you don't want to have AoE slows on everyone. You can put Hallowed Ground like Consecration, and it will clear all snares on everyone. So that's actually very strong as well. So that those are the PvP talents. Now let's talk about strengths and weaknesses, and then let's talk about rotation, about the Justicar Vengeance build, but also the like a Final Verdict build. So strength of that class is absurd burst, good CC, mobility is meh, but now you have divine steed of GCD, so you should not press like constantly like divine steed before you're using those two stacks. But it put a like a inner GCD on it, so you now are a bit protected from it. You can also make a macro with Blessing of Freedom, so you can actually just press one button and you will have divine steed. But that's actually very nice. What else? You have pretty much one of the most tankiest specs right now. Let me explain. You have Divine Protection on a 1 minute CD, 30% for 8 seconds, usable while stunned. My Enhancement Shaman actually dreams about that. We do not have that. We basically, Enhancement Shaman has a worse kit than Red's, like overall. Like there is nothing redeemable compared to Retribution Paladin. Although I'm a very big fan of Enhancement Shaman, like I do play it a lot. Even on stream I did play it. But right now it is not a great time to play Enhancement Shaman. You are painting the comparison with Retribution Paladin. You have Shield of Vengeance, very big defensive as well. You can even play with Emblem. You can play, again, Divine Shield is such a good CD now because you have defensive. So even if it's MD'd, it doesn't matter because you have Divine Protection, you have Shield of Vengeance. You also have Blessing of Spell Warding now, so you have defensive versus casters, and you have Blessing of Protection, which is also very big. Just in general, you're going to have a great time to actually survive and to make people survive your damage. So I really like that. You have also still Blessing of Sacrifice. So you have a lot of defensive, a lot of utility, and that is a big strength of like Retribution Paladin. I think having Holy Strike is also a very big positive thing for Retries because you can now face versus people that are actually anti-casters, like for example Unholy DKs or just rogues that are cloaking. You can basically just Holy Strike them and they're still going to get damage. And if they're going to evasion now with rogues, you can just do now I don't know if judgment goes through evasion, so that I don't know, but do not know. But often enough, what I do is just I switch targets if I see evasion. While cloak, I do tend to stay on it, so works pretty well in my opinion. Weaknesses, mobility, pretty much just a mobility. That is not going to change. I think it's the only weakness you have. Consistent damage is very high. You're not reliant on wings anymore. You can pretty much kill anyone every 30 seconds, and even before that you can still kill someone, but every 30 seconds you have a legit kill attempt with your Hajj. Now let's talk about rotations real quick, and then we're going to talk about comms and my overall how can I say sentiment towards Retribution Paladin. So I'm going to give you the rotation, just consistent damage, But to be honest, even consistent damage is a burst rotation. So with consistent damage, you try to use your Templar's Verdict, Templar's Strikes, Judgment into a final verdict, and then a Hammer of Wrath whenever you can. They are low HP, so again, it's not really that representative. Try to Judgment whenever you can. Try to keep like a Judgment stack whenever you have, so you can actually just burst whenever you can. And that's pretty much like your damage. You have your Hammer of Wrath, Judgment, Final Verdict, Blade of Justice, and your Templar's Strikes, which is the lowest priority. Again, it's not really the best talent, but your damage is, again, very strong. Just do damage, whatever is actually lining up, just use it. If you have like Holy Strike, please use Final Verdict because you don't want to overcap it. You can also weave one Templar's Verdict into a Final Verdict into another Templar's Verdict for the increased damage from the PvP talents, which is Templar Strikes. So you have that. It's now, if you want to do your biggest burst damage, you can track Divine Arbiter. You have 12 stacks right now, but you don't need to do that, but you can. So pretty much Blade of Justice, and then you're going to Judgment, into Execution Sentence, into Wings, into Final Verdict, into Judgment, into Hammer of Wrath, into Hammer of Wrath, into Wake of Ashes if you are like out of Holy Power, and then you can just continue your rotation with Final Verdicts, and you're pretty much going to destroy someone whenever you have the time to do that. And the damage is still nice. Look, I have 77k, actually 77k DPS. I'm not even like sweating. I didn't even like Harsh, for example. I can Execution Sentence again, and then I'm going to burst again. Like, this is my burst rotation again, right? So, and now I have my final like Divine Arbiter. Boom, big damage, and someone is going to die, pretty much. So at all times, even whenever I'm like talking, I'm not like pressing abilities, I have 60k DPS. We have Final Verdict critting for 118k. That's not impressive, but we do a 91k normal hit. So you should imagine if it crits. Like, if you're critting, you're going to do a lot of damage. Judgment critting for 93k, it could even crit for more. It depends if you have like Avenging Wrath or not. You have Execution Sentence hitting for 220k. Now in PvP it's reduced, like on players it's actually reduced, so you will do like around 160k, like between 120k and 160k, something like that. I don't know if you can hit more. To be honest, often or not, people die through it. So we have Hammer of Wrath actually critting all the time, so you will do 60ks reliably. So that is part of your rotation. You just need to press it. If you're having a choice between Blade of Justice, Temple Strikes, and Hammer of Wrath, you should always try to press Hammer of Wrath. That's the highest priority builder that you have, with Judgment as well. You have Judgment, you have Blade of Justice critting for 55k as well. Divine Arbiter, like I said, 75k pretty reliably. In PvP, I guess with armor and such, it would be 60k, 65k, 70k, depending if you're actually bursting with Avenging Wrath. You have Divine Storm, only usable whenever you have the Empowering Legacy, but by themselves does crit 85k and also hit 51k, so you just imagine the damage you can do. You have Templar Slash again, like Templar Strikes actually do a lot of damage. The second part is actually doing a lot of damage as well. You have Wake of Ashes, again, a lot of damage, just a lot of damage as well. And yeah, I mean, everything you're doing, like every button I'm pressing does a lot of damage. And that is actually something that is feeling very nice on Retribution Paladin. Now I'm going to show you the JV build. So it's pretty much the same, but you have JV instead of Templar's Verdict. JV is just because Vengeance, if you are wondering. So the burst rotation, again, you want to stack up the holy powers. You're going to do a Avenging Wrath whenever you can. Judgment into your Execution Sentence, Avenging Wrath, and you're going to burst pretty much very hard with it. So this is pretty much the damage you can do as a Retribution Paladin. And now you see, again, I didn't really crit too much. If I critted more, it would be even more damage. But you see, my burst is really, really long. There is nothing people can do. Like right now, I have Divine Arbiter stacked up. I'm going to wait for a Judgment. Boom, I judged into a big JV with a big Divine Arbiter proc. And then again, you have 30 seconds. You're going to use your execution sentence into a judgment, into maybe a Blade of Justice, into a JV, and then another judgment to get Imperial Legacy. Boom, a lot of damage, and someone is dead, pretty much. And again, there's nothing people can do around it. Nobody can actually defend through it. Wake of Ashes is something you're going to press whenever you're going to use execution sentence, because even if you're overcapped on holy power, you have so much like generators and generating abilities that it doesn't really matter if you're overcapping, because if you're going to burst, like right now, you're going to decimate people. Like, this is unsustained, like it's unhealable. People are like dying left, right, and center. And then you're going to stun whenever he's going to actually pop, and boom, someone is dead. And then you're going to Wake of Ashes, and again, lots of damage. And if I'm going to show you my details, we have 160k crits on Justicar's Vengeance. We have judgments 106k. We have other judgments as well. I don't know what it is. This, I think it's probably Divine Toll. We have execution sentence here doing 200k. Again, it's in PvP, it's a bit less. Hammer of Wrath, a bit less damage because it doesn't crit. We have Blade of Justice, normal hits for 36k, pretty good. Wake of Ashes crits for 111k, and then you have the second part, which is actually the slashes, which is also good damage. We have Divine Arbiter, normal hitting for 83k. So you have a lot of ways to be very strong, and I think overall, Retribution Paladin is very, very good at that. I think it deserves a nerf, but even when it is nerfed, it's going to be pretty fun as well. So I'm going to show you the third build, which is with Final Reckoning. It's pretty much the same again, but instead of using your execution sentence, you're going to use your Final Reckoning before you're going to burst. So I'm going to show you the burst again. So I'm going to pretty much Blade of Justice. We have judgments running, and then you're going to have like enough stacks to do a lot of damage. Final Reckoning into Avenging Wrath, into a JV, into again a judgment, into Blade of Justice, into JV, into Wake of Ashes again, into JV, into another judgment, and again you're decimating people, and they still have the Final Reckoning buff, right? So this is again unsustainable, and it's a mini buff. Like, I didn't create my Justicar's Vengeance. Remember, I didn't create a Justicar's Vengeance. Imagine if I'm creating that at that very moment, I would do insane damage. I did 100k normal hits, so you can assume like more or less, not times 2, but like times 1.8, something like that. And that's pretty much the amount of damage you were going to do on your Justicar's Vengeance whenever you're critting. But it's insane. It's really insane. And it's not my favorite build because you're relying on a 1-minute CD, and yes, your Avenging Wrath actually lines up correctly on it. So right now, see, I have a Judgment. Let's do Final Reckoning into a big Avenging Wrath, and then you have like your damage. And again, it really depends on you critting. But even if you're critting just normal Justicar's Vengeance, you're going to decimate people. And I think yeah, it's very strong. I think it's very strong, and especially if all the stars are aligning with maybe Earthen Writ proccing, with like the Divine Purpose proccing and such, you're going to do insane amount of damage. Now, am I in combat still? I'm in combat still. I wanted to showcase the flame build, but I'm not going to. I think rotation wise, you know, the flame build that's like with the PvE build, which is Searing Light. I don't really need to showcase because it's not really meta anyways. So you can make up your mind on it. I will show every single build on the comments, so you have like 4 builds you can test. The first 3 are the meta builds, which is the Holy Strike 20 yards, the JV build with execution sentence, and the JV build with Final Reckoning. And then you have the Flame build, which is the PvE build, which you can try in BGs, but it's not really good. So you can test it at your own time and anyways, I forgot what I was to say. So about comps, I think Retribution Paladin are actually able to play multiple comps now because your damage is quite unsustainable and you have a lot of like great support. But I think the best comps are Retribution Paladin with a warrior in trees. You have Rogue with a Paladin, which is Scooby-Doo Cleave, very strong. You have Demonology Warlock with a Retribution Paladin, but you can also work with a Destruction Warlock. But what you like about Demonology Warlock is actually the MS effect. You can make it work, I guess, maybe with Windwalker. I think it could be very strong as well, very bursty. I think you can also work with a Frost Decay, but you don't have an MS effect, but your burst is going to be incredible. I think you're going to decimate people. I'm still in combat, unfortunately. Those are the comps I would play. In twos, I think you're going to be better as well because you have kill pressure now. Although the MS effect is very important in twos, so if you are struggling more in twos than in threes, it is normal because you don't have MS effect. You can also play double DPS and probably do very good with the amount of damage you have. What else? I want to give my final thoughts about the rework. I kind of promised at the end of the video to do that. The video is quite long, but again, it's an ultimate Retribution Paladin PvP guide, so I think it's fair to have a longer video. I really like the rework. I think the rework is probably one of the best reworks since a long time. I think Shadow Priest is like one of the reworks that really missed the target multiple times in Legion, in BFA, in Shadowlands, and now in Dragonflight. Next season we'll also have a Shadow Priest rework. We had a rework every expansion since Legion, and I think it's crying for the same kind of idea of Retribution Paladin, having multiple builds playable and having not everything like around PvE and not always PvE in mind. Because they are nerfing Shadow Priest for a few things and then they are buffing for another thing, but in PvP it's going to get destroyed. And I kind of wish, I'm kind of jealous with my enhancement shaman to not have this amount of rework going on. Excuse me. So I would like to see that kind of love and kind of work for Fury Warriors, enhancement shaman, even Affliction Warlock. Let's be honest, Affliction Warlock is a mess. It's either OP or it is trash. That's pretty much how it is. I would also like to them to actually rework a lot of like healing specs. I think Resto Druid kind of needs a rework. I think they kind of work, but in certain extents where it's either very good or it's very bad, and it gets countered by purge. But now they add in 10.1 a PvP talent, which whenever you're purging, you're going to get silenced at one point. So I guess there is a few things that can be worked around that, but I think a few specs just need a rework. Again, I forgot about Frost Decay and Holy Decay. I think DK specs just need a whole rework. They are not working. I think they're not good. They're either OP, like Unholy Decay, or they're like not working at all. Like right now, Unholy Decay is not working at all. And then you have like Frost Decay, which works versus specs that has no disarm, and then whenever there is a disarm you have to all in and then just pray that you're going to die while you're going for all in. So there's it's a bit messy, but I wanted to talk about Retribution Paladin again. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. One thing is for sure, they need to maybe change a few talents, because they did say that they wanted to remove a lot of modifiers, because it felt that it was modifier land for Retribution Paladin. But then they added Vanguard of Justice. They added again like a lot of like Divine Arbiter is 5%, for example. You have a Final Reckoning still existing. You have a lot of like modifiers for the same spells, and they removed Seraphim because it was a modifier, but you have basically a better Seraphim with Vanguard of Justice because it adds 20% damage instead of 12% mastery, for example. So I don't know what they were thinking, but Vanguard of Justice is actually a Seraphim on steroids. And yeah, we will have to see what they're going to do. But again, thank you for watching this video. Really appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. We will catch each other very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.